Good afternoon, colleagues, and welcome to this, our webinar on low-carbon energy solutions for low-income housing development in Cape Town. What we'd like to go through with you this afternoon is to share with you some work that we've been doing on a pre-feasibility study to identify potential low-carbon energy solutions for a housing development in the Cape Town region. The project is being done by a consortium of partners. It's being led by South North, and I'm this afternoon joined by my co-presenter John Thorne from South North, who will introduce himself in a moment. We're working also with Planet Capital Energy. I'm from the Carbon Trust, and we're also working with ARG Design, who are the planners for the housing redevelopment in the region. Excuse me just one second whilst I try and move the slides down. There we are. So my name is Benjamin Kionye. I am the Africa Director for the Carbon Trust, and I head up our office based in Pretoria. And I'm joined by John Thorne from South North.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending. South North is a Cape Town-based NGO consultancy focusing on climate change and the development in sub-Saharan Africa. We're sitting here. It's a hot summer afternoon in Cape Town, and we appreciate you listening to us today.
The Carbon Trust, for those of you that haven't come across this before, is also a not-for-profit advisory organization in the area of resource efficiency and renewable energy, renewable technology acceleration. So what will we go through this afternoon? These are just kind of some very brief points on an introduction. I've described a little bit about the background. I've introduced who we are. The aims of the session really are to share with you the work that we have done to date on the redevelopment of this particular settlement in the Cape Town area, and really kind of to share with you some of our conclusions to date. The other aim is to then hear back, ideally, from the market, and that is you, on potential kind of solutions, potential technologies, potential approaches that we are maybe haven't had the opportunity to think about or haven't explored. So we're going to give you as much information as we can about the project to date, and there'll be an opportunity for questions near the end. But then afterwards, what we'd really like is we'll be sending you out information, and what we'd really like to hear back from you, the market, are thoughts about potential solutions, to hear about your technologies, your approaches, to see how those could be leveraged into our project, into our circumstance. So in terms of the agenda for this afternoon, we're going to go through a brief project overview. We're going to describe obviously kind of where the project is and what it is, and what the aims are. Then we'll kind of share with you some of the early data that we have regarding likely energy demand in the development, and what the requirements of the local residents are. Then, those two elements will be provided by John here. I will then kind of take over and explore a little bit more the solutions that we have concluded to date. I should say those are, rather than solutions, those are probably more kind of boundaries for solutions. So certainly kind of we have attempted to reduce the solution space by concluding on a few elements, and I'll share with you our thinking on that to date. One of the key concerns as we redevelop this particular area is the potential for local economic generation. So again, we'll share with you how we hope that the potential solutions that will eventually be deployed can drive local economic development. I'll describe then at the very end just our proposed next steps, and then I'll leave ideally 20 minutes or so for questions that you may have. So with that, I'll hand over to John.
Thanks, Benjamin. Yeah, so Cape Town, like many African cities, has experienced rapid urbanization over the last couple of decades. And so this project focuses on the southern corridor, and you can see it marked on the map on your right there. And the southern corridor is home to some of the poorest people in the metro of Cape Town. And with this urbanization, Cape Town has a number of informal housing settlements, and currently the housing backlog stands at over 500,000. We're going to be focusing on the Kosovo informal settlement. It's actually more than just Kosovo. It's three parcels of land and total 7,000 housing units. And the exciting opportunity here is this is a catalytic project, so it's got the opportunity to pilot and demonstrate a new way of implementing low-cost housing in the metro. Okay, next, I'm going to move on to the next slide. So this next slide shows, on the left-hand side, there's a map of Cape Town, and you can see the project site, which is about 25 kilometers to the southeast of the CBD. It's close to some transport hubs, and on the right-hand side, you'll see an aerial view, the three parcels of land. And yeah, I think I'm going to move on from there. You can get a feeling for the level of densification in the low cost, in the informal housing settlement. And this project is going to be focusing on these three parcels of land. And I'm going to move on to the next slide. I think the take-home message on this slide is that we're dealing with a very low-income houses. So people generally earn under 3,500 Rand a month, which is just over £200. Many of the houses are single-headed. There's very high unemployment. And a lot of the people qualify for housing subsidies. And moving on to the next slide. So with this in mind, the project planners and architects have looked at a new model of providing housing for low-income housing. And they've been looking at a number of different strategies to lift people out of poverty, to create employment. And energy is a key part of that. Some of the other elements we're going to see later when we look at the design in the next slide, I think, are looking at rooftop food production, establishment of an agri-hub, sub-renting space, etc. I'm going to move on to the next slide. So this slide looks at the models around densification and housing typology. So on the diagram on the left, one sees the old model of spread out bungalow housing in close proximity, and on the right hand side we can see this new model of sectional title apartments, walk-ups. And the key point here is that by combining by using the densification, one's able to save a lot of money and improve the services to the houses. So we see on the right hand side the diagram. There's this 8 apartment sectional title block. Those open white spaces are, in fact, that's what they are. They're spaces that the homeowner is able to fix up slowly over time and then sublet to and use that to generate income. There's a rooftop garden of about 120 meters squared, and the planners and the architects have looked at providing solar PV on the rooftops. I think I'm gonna move on to the next slide now. Yeah, this slide really just illustrates the distribution of the households across the various plots. And I don't think we need to move on from here, but just to note that there's going to be an element of mixed use with schools, this agri-hub we talked about, rooftop food production, the potential for waste and nutrients, etc. Moving on. So projects like these require generally require a comprehensive planning and project preparation phase. So we're currently in pre-feasibility. And that pre-feasibility will last for the next 2 years, and then move on to bulk infrastructure and probably construction starting in 2021 over 4 phases. And clearly the energy solution will need to run in parallel with the rest of the project preparation phase. All right, I'm going to move on to the next slide. This project is a collaboration between the province, Department of Human Settlements, that receives money from an allocation from the Treasury, and the local level, the City of Cape Town. And so it's a collaboration between them, which means that the stakeholders that have to be aligned, this partnership we need to work with. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide. Okay, so the next 2 or 3 slides, we're going to talk briefly to some of the early work and some of the early research we've done around the energy solution, and I'm going to hand over to Benjamin. So South Africa has what we call a free basic electricity grant. And the objective is to provide basic free electricity to poor households, to lower their cost of use. And recent research has shown that access to free energy is effective, cost-effective way of lifting people out of poverty. So generally, households, the very low-income households, use up to about 180 kilowatts per household per month. And low-income houses, and you can see there the monthly income levels that we're talking about, use up to about 250. And the type of uses are lighting, TV, electric hot plates, fridge, stoves, and radio. So media is a big one, lighting. There's a question around this project whether cooking is going to be utilizing electricity or gas, and that's open for intervention and discussion at the moment. All right, I'm going to move on to the next. So what we've done here is we've looked at the energy utilization over one of these areas. We've consolidated it into a 24-hour view, and we've brought in the demand side interventions as, in effect, supply side options, and you can see the morning and afternoon peak there. And what's interesting is that by providing LED lighting, solar water heaters, and insulation, one can go quite a long way towards reducing the energy required from the grid. So the gray bar at the top there is the residual energy that's required for this project. Okay, Benjamin, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thanks, John. I'm just going to share now, kind of, as I said previously, what our early thinking is in terms of what a potential solution could look like. And we've, for obvious reasons, broken that down into both a technical perspective, really kind of what is the hardware and what is the kit that will be installed, versus a business model to answer some of those more softer sides of how will the payment systems work and who will eventually own the asset. So let's kind of kick off with technical, and you can see there are kind of 5 areas that we've considered. The first we've considered is tier of service. You'll all, I'm sure, be familiar with the concept of different levels of energy service. In this scenario, I think it's very clear to assume that we will need the highest tier level 5 / grid. the present residents have access to the grid. They live in shacks, but those have been electrified, and therefore they have access to grid electricity. So what is very clear is that one can't take them down a tier level. So whatever solution we provide will have to be grid level service. In terms of the primary provider of electrical energy, John has already shown you that the early kind of concept designs from the town planners are these large condominium style buildings, but that have a dedicated roof space, both to gardening, yes, but also to PV installation. So certainly the primary provision there or is anticipated to be a PV service. And at present modeling across the 3 parcels of land, there are 6 hectares of space in order to put in PV, which we believe will provide around 4 to 6 megawatts worth of power. We did have a debate to talk about whether or not we could realistically provide a DC solution as opposed to an AC solution. There are indeed examples of mini grids in kind of the region of in some of the informal developments in Cape Town that actually have DC provision. But because these residents already have access to AC electricity, and therefore will have their own AC appliances, from a community acceptance perspective, it's very unlikely that we'd be able to put them onto a DC, despite the cost benefits and transmission advantages that those provide. So the solution will need to be an AC solution. Moving on, there is, of course, the question of storage / grid connectivity. The fact that there has been grid provision historically, or presently, I should say, means that it will make most sense probably to have a grid-connected solution. The counterfactual of that is, of course, that also storage technologies are extremely expensive and are more than likely to make the project unprofitable, particularly when one considers the need for affordability. So we don't believe that a purely off-grid solution is cost-effective from the additional storage needs, or indeed the additional kind of operations and maintenance challenges. And it's fair to point out that the City of Cape Town has an export to grid tariff. So the City of Cape Town's provision does make allowances for exporting to the grid, which is likely to happen during the day, outside of the peaks. There is, of course, the question of thermal provision, and this is still very much a wide open space. Our present thinking is that the thermal provision will be obviously for hot water and then also for cooking. In terms of hot water, we think the most cost-effective and efficient solution will be through the use of what in South Africa are called solar water geysers or solar water boilers. And rather than heat pumps. That's notwithstanding, of course, the fact that will take away some of the space available for PV. But nonetheless, given the efficiency of solar water geysers, that's probably a sensible trade-off. That said, the Cape Town, we've had obviously early conversations with Cape Town, the City of Cape Town. And they have expressed concerns around the use of solar water heaters. There has been kind of solar water heating rolled out on a fairly mass scale in informal settlements previously in South Africa. And Cape Town has expressed the concern that this does lead to increased maintenance and often inadequate hot water for households with lots of people. And so that is an area where we're still we think it might be solar water heating, but we're not certain. So if there are any ideas, then please, we would welcome those. Cooking, obviously cooking is a relatively intense thermal load, which, if done electrically, would require quite a lot of provision, and is unlikely to be met through PV alone. And so would either need to be the grid itself or through a gas solution. And so we have concluded that gas could be a realistic opportunity, and not only that, but it also provides a local economic activity if one does it through through the use of cylinders, and the opportunity there being obviously the distribution of cylinders. We are conscious, however, that if one is introducing an alternative supply solution alongside the electrical solution, that does add complexity to supply-side infrastructure. And that is something to be considered, because again, and that is to be considered because one of the first questions to ask is that fair to be bringing that level of complexity to, if you like, kind of the bottom of the pyramid. So that is a concern. The present hypothesis is that there will be no need for space heating loads. The building will have appropriate levels of insulation. So we don't believe that there will be space heating requirements. And just to kind of last point there, we are very much open to other options, such as kind of heat pumps on for water heating, but again, one must consider the additional cost and complexity and maintenance requirements for such a technology. And very last slide on the technical solution. We do think there needs to be a demand management element for two reasons. One, to minimize the use of grid as the balancer, and therefore to kind of optimize the profitability of the PV installation, but also to control client consumption and ensure kind of to ensure affordability. The caveat to this point around demand management is that we need to avoid at the same time shifting consumption profiles for the poor, who often have less disposable time than the middle or the upper classes. So we cannot expect them to have to wait, for example, to have to access hot water, because they are often up and about and moving long before the middle and the upper classes. So that profile shifting for the bottom of the pyramid is to be minimized. At this stage, we have no view as to how kind of demand management will be done. We're aware, obviously, that there are physical controls, meaning kind of multi-tiered delivery systems, versus kind of software remote controlling. And as an example, could we reserve the free basic electricity grant that is available for people to lighting, to ensure that there is always lighting available for people. So we're very much keen to hear back from the market as to kind of potential solutions around demand management and how it works and how it's been effectively deployed in other scenarios. Just to say, from and John talked about it earlier when he presented the demand management slide, the building will include demand side measures. So we are anticipating that the building is equipped with LEDs, with insulation, and we've talked about solar water heating. Good. So moving on to the business model, a slightly greater number of considerations here. But our first and primary point is that we would love to see this as an opportunity to develop energy as a service. And what we mean by that is the provision of energy-related services and indeed value-add services, even beyond energy, rather than the simple provision of kilowatt hours. And what we mean by that is that one can imagine the provision of energy services such as lighting, refrigeration, entertainment, and even the potential to then kind of provide appliance sales alongside that. it's not the precedents in South Africa are relatively limited and very much on a small scale. And have been done in Stellenbosch and in Philippi, which are areas around Cape Town, but very much on kind of micro or nano grid type solutions. So this would be really kind of the first kind of larger scale rollout of energy as a service. And what we would really love to see is then the provision of additional services alongside those energy as a service. And one commonly sees provision of things like data and internet, and even kind of the provision of financial and banking services and insurance products. And of course, that immediately begs the question to whether or not those additional services can actually, to some degree, cross-subsidize the provision of the energy. John kind of alluded earlier to kind of those 7 development strategies for the region, for the location, I should say, and those include, if you like, kind of development of other delivery services, including thermal, and we talked about the gas, but there's also kind of water collection off the roof, and therefore kind of there could even be the potential to link this energy as a service with the delivery of other utilities, including the gas and potentially kind of water delivery. So there is quite a lot of expansion possibility here. Thinking about tariff structure, we think that we've obviously talked about kind of the provision of services rather than kilowatt hours, but of course that tariff structure or that service structure will need to balance profitability with affordability, and so there are obviously concerns around kind of social acceptance, community equality. We need to remember that other people over the road will be obviously on a different structure. They'll be on a more traditional tariff-based structure. So how can we make sure that we're really providing kind of these value-add services that are kind of accepted by the community? We'll talk a little bit later about kind of the ownership, but our imagination is that ultimate ownership would lie with the City of Cape Town, who has the liberty to set its tariffs, subject to approval by the regulator. So theoretically, tariffs could be adjusted for this purpose. And I've talked about the desire to, or the potential to cross-subsidize the energy with, of course, these other value-add services, which I mentioned earlier on. We will need a payment system. Arguably, that's a technical solution rather than a business model, but we will need a payment system. And at this stage, we have not concluded kind of how or what that would look like. And so all of the solutions are still very much on the table, including mobile money, prepaid meters, which are the present system, and kind of other kind of remote payment systems. And of course, to the degree that it's possible, then that platform should permit the delivery of the other value-add services which I've described. We think the most likely ownership model is that of City of Cape Town ownership. I mean, that's certainly very much kind of how other energy systems are working here in the City of Cape Town. And the City of Cape Town obviously has the mandate and the responsibility for the provision of services to its constituents, including energy. At the same time, the City of Cape Town kind of does need the revenue income, although one should kind of point out that in this particular circumstance, the cost to serve local residents is actually higher than the revenue that is generated from the residents. The other kind of advantages of City of Cape Town ownership is, of course, kind of there is then much a facilitated ability to cross-subsidize the tariffs with other tariffs around the city, with other users, and indeed kind of a facilitated access to the free basic electricity grant. Which we don't know, but is unlikely to be able to be passed on to a third party owner. What we do think, however, is that there will need to be a private operation and maintenance and management, to operate and maintain the system, to collect the revenue, to design and implement those value-added services that we talked about, and to ensure the participation of local skills and local employees. We've talked about kind of the need to drive local economic opportunities, but it's worth just mentioning again. Whatever solutions should really be that are ultimately put forward should really be considered in the light of local economic potential, and so we would love and that really is twofold. The first fold is we need to provide sufficient levels of service and sufficient levels of energy as to allow local economic growth, and there needs to be the potential for people to access what one might call productive use energy. At the same time, the delivery itself of the solution can obviously provide local economic growth, and we can talk about we've talked about the provision of gas services, but there is also kind of other utility services in terms of waste, water, the development of the agricultural hubs through the rooftop gardens, and so on and so forth. So kind of really kind of interested to hear how the delivery of a solution can kind of unlock local growth. So that was a very quick run through the potential solution and the solution space as we've defined it. Some of the outstanding questions, or those questions that haven't necessarily been put to bed completely. What is the best mode of demand management? Is it a physical control or a software remote level of control? Should there be some level of storage, even despite there being kind of grid level connection, or is that really just surplus to requirements and will just increase the costs? What other options, should we be considering in terms of technology deployment? And we've cited there heat pumps as an option. Are there innovative ways to reduce the risks or shift the burden of risks away from the city or consumers? There is a concern that a multi-supply solution could be too complex, and that therefore that might kind of reduce consumer acceptance if there are, if you like, kind of too many fail points or risks attached. City is particularly interested in understanding to what degree kind of innovative operating and payment systems can reduce illegal connections and electricity theft, which is quite a big challenge. How of course do we kind of ensure social acceptance and ensure kind of community equality in different locations. So we've talked about there are kind of some inherent risks, of course, with such a project. There's one of the key concerns is obviously around kind of community acceptance of the solution. In South Africa, it is fair to say South Africa has done an outstanding job since 1995 of taking kind of energy access from around the 40% mark to the 85% mark, which is really quite incredible. But that does mean that the masses expect grid level service, and therefore there are examples of attempted deployment of solar home systems and mini grids which have failed because they don't provide the right level of service. So community acceptance of the solution is obviously kind of extremely important, as it is throughout Africa, but has particular nuances in South Africa. Affordability is obviously a key concern, and therefore kind of that is something that we need to be aware of. That said, the City of Cape Town's present solution, which is obviously kind of a grid delivery, does lose money. So there is a question mark about, okay, well, can our solution or can a solution kind of be less costly to the city, or indeed turn a profit? We need a solution that provides effective collection of revenue. And of course, there is the concern around security of assets. that one does need to be aware of the unfortunate reality of theft of technologies and equipment, and therefore we are interested to understand how organizations and providers have ensured that their technology is secured, both through soft factors such as kind of community involvement, but also hard factors in terms of bolting equipment and rendering it kind of theft proof, so to speak. And then there is the need to provide a fair solution. There is concern that too often the poor are being overburdened with being kind of the guinea pigs for these kind of so-called innovative and new solutions, and that they don't provide the same level of service as traditional grid delivery. So we need to make sure that any solution that is provided is not unfairly burdening these communities. And on the contrary, is actually delivering the kind of uplift that we would all like to see. Just beyond the delivery of the solar of the energy system, we've talked about the fact that there are kind of other economic opportunities in the local environment, and therefore there is the operation and maintenance of solar water heaters and or other kind of thermal solutions in the form of collection and delivery of gas canisters. One imagines kind of in a future scenario that that kind of local municipal waste could be used to supply a local biodigester that could be also installed and run by a local company in order to kind of take advantage of that symbiosis. The buildings will have rooftop space, or rooftop gardens, I should say, to produce local produce that is designed to supplement kind of residents' diets. But at the same time, there will be the creation of kind of these agri hubs in the community to trade this food and therefore kind of provide that economic impact as well. Good. So this is just a brief, I suppose, repetition of the project process that we're in. As John said, we're doing this kind of very quick pre-feasibility, and I should take the moment to publicly thank the British High Commission here in South Africa that has funded this pre-feasibility study through its Prosperity Fund, but it's a very short-term project, and indeed we will be kind of wrapping up our early thinking as soon as the end of March, having kicked off just midway through January. So it's a very short, quick pre-feasibility, which is designed to, if you like, kind of throw in some alternative ideas. Can we through this project, through this catalytic project, can we introduce some alternative ideas that could be carried through to feasibility study. The feasibility study will then kind of happen in the latter half of this year, before kind of project implementation, kind of as from around 2020. So, what is it that we are looking for, and what is it that we are doing? We are obviously kind of running this webinar in an effort to make aware as many delivery organizations as we are aware of about this project, about what it is we're trying to do, because really we're very interested to hear back from you about your technologies, about your approaches, and keen to understand to what degree kind of your solution could potentially be deployed in the scenario that we have described. So this webinar, if you like, is a first step to that. And we have indeed, to that end, kind of made this webinar. We've marketed it to kind of nearly 150 organizations that we are aware of, kind of providing these kinds of solutions. So after this webinar, we will be circulating these slides, of course, but also we will be circulating a project briefing document which provides a little bit more information and then a request for information. And the request for information is a Word template with a series of questions, which we would love for you to fill in as much or as little information as you are able, so that we can understand your solution and understand your thinking about how your solution approach could be deployed. And as you've seen, we're very much interested in solutions or approaches that range from kind of the primary technology in terms of the PV provision, right through to the softer side of things. So, you know, how to provide kind of energy services or value add services or demand management. If you are a provider of finance, we're also keen to understand kind of, you know, your experience of providing finance for these kind of projects, and where that finance comes from, and how that's typically costed. We would love to understand in your kind of submission some high level cost, you know, some high level metrics. You know, what's the power, what's the cost, you know, how much space does it take, you know, if applicable, and we've designed the templates as much as possible to consider those kind of variations. We've set the deadline for a couple of weeks time, for the 7th of March, and we'll obviously kind of be reviewing those thereafter, and introducing, you know, and exploring those solutions kind of through the rest of the project. We'd love, there is a space obviously on the template to kind of express your interest in understanding more about the project, and time permitting, and depending on how many kind of responses we get back, we will look to kind of follow up with organizations individually, to understand a little bit more about the solution. And as I said, you know, our job is then to submit our pre-feasibility and our recommendations to ARG and to the stakeholders that John described at the end of March, when our funding from the Prosperity Fund comes to an end. So that leaves us a rather good 20 minutes for questions. So I'm just going to, we're seeing a few questions come through, so we'll just deal with a few of those before we wrap up. So the first question: how many numbers of people in the 7,000 households? John?
So we think there's an average of about 2.5 people per household, 2.5, 3 people per household, Benjamin.
So that obviously kind of puts it around 15 to 18,000 people in those in that area. Next question:
what are the payment ratios for current electrification? And I'm not sure what this question is asking.
The same asker has asked what proportion of the community utilizes illegal connections. So that could, if you like, kind of be a. We're going to assume that's the same question asked a different way. We don't actually know is the simple answer with that, and it's obviously a worthwhile kind of understanding. It's worthwhile understanding that. As part of this project, we haven't done any sort of in-depth kind of community engagement. It's too early in the process, but certainly kind of that is something that we will need to investigate.
What we do know is that the city currently, it costs the city about 500 Rand per household to support and maintain that connection, and they would be very keen to recoup some of that through a payment mechanism that is simple and easy to use, and a sort of energy services type of payment mechanism.
The next question: have we considered implementing a local energy market where prosumers, in other words PV owners, can trade between themselves? That is not something which South Africa is arguably kind of near. Cape Town at present is the only municipality that permits any sort of net metering, although other municipalities are catching up. But there's certainly kind of no, I think, intention where kind of PV owners, if you like, kind of trade between themselves on a free energy market.
There's a nascent market in the ability to exchange electricity, to wheel electricity, but it's very early days. And what we're seeing is that the regulatory environment is changing to cater for new technology. And we have got what's called the small scale embedded generation program in the city, where the city will repurchase excess energy from rooftop solar PV. So that's something we can consider in the business model to this solution.
Question: is the City of Cape Town prepared to put down guarantees for the project, or indeed provincial and national government? So the honest answer to that is we don't know. We haven't, if you like, kind of we haven't kind of reached the stage where we've put solutions to the City of Cape Town. Certainly it is our early thinking that the City of Cape Town's preference will be more than likely to own the assets. There is no precedent in South Africa that I'm aware of where there is kind of municipalities, signing power purchase agreements to a third-party provider. So that is so kind of, I'm not sure that is going to happen in this scenario. I think it's far more likely that Cape Town chooses to own the assets and then appoints a third-party provider to deliver the service. Is there a last question that I can see? Is there a space cooling demand within the properties? The answer, we have asked this question to the designer, ARG, the town planner, and the answer is no, not as yet. With the belief is that the insulation and the quality of the build will be sufficient to not require space cooling or indeed space heating loads in the building, particularly because, I mean, just from a space heating perspective, the concern is that, or the belief is that there will be sufficient activity and sufficient closeness that the buildings will remain warm from all of the activity and, of course, the insulation that will be put in. Good. I think that is all the questions that we've had through for the moment. So remains for me to thank you very much for attending, for sacrificing some of your Thursday afternoon to listen to us. We, as have said, will be delivering or sending out the information to you as soon as tomorrow. So those will be the slides, the project briefing document, which contains a little bit more of the information and the data, and of course the request for information. You are, of course, free to email. Us for additional questions or thoughts. And it was remiss of us not to put an email on this last slide. But mine is benjamin.kurnier, so that is spelled C-U-R-N-I-E-R. So benjamin.kurnier @carbontrust.com. So thank you very much, John.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to interacting with you around this very exciting project in the future.
Thank you, and bye-bye.